Well, the House is actually right now in the midst of a debate over the budget framework that passed the Senate last week. At issue for several Republicans is the significant gap between the two chambers, a $1 to $1.5 trillion gap, to be specific. The Senate version of the budget bill calls for $4 billion, that's with a B, in spending cuts, while many in the House desire at least $1.5 trillion, that's with a T, in cuts. Well, yesterday, members of Congress, including some of the House Freedom Caucus members, met with President Trump at the White House to discuss how they might come to a budget agreement. So, where do things stand now as the House is in the midst of this debate? Joining me now to discuss this, Suzanne Bowdey, editorial director and senior writer for The Washington Stand. Suzanne, thanks for joining me as the House is in the midst of this debate, even as we speak.
It's a pressure cooker on the floor, as I understand it. You see Johnson running around talking to members. We've gotten to the point where the House can actually vote on the resolution. They did adopt the rule, which, as we've said before, is the way that they can move on to the actual bill. He only squeaked through, though. 3 members voted against the rule, some for different reasons. The tariffs have played an interesting role in this whole debate. One of the bits of language that was snuck into that rule was that no member could vote against the Trump tariff extensions past October. In other words, if you sign on to this rule, that means you're not going to fight any of Trump's tariffs. And a couple of the members have come out since then and said that's why we voted against the rule.
Just again, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, a rule, we've talked about this before, but a rule is necessary to set the parameters for the debate on a piece of legislation. So each chamber has a kind of a different way of doing things. The House adopts this rule, and oftentimes many things are rolled into the rule. Last week, the proxy voting was rolled into the rule, it
killed it. Yeah.
Right. And so that's why you had 9 members, Republican members, join the Democrats to vote against the rule. So a similar thing this week, although not enough Republicans to defeat the rule went into place, and so now we are debating the actual bill itself.
Right, and no one is quite sure how this is going to shake out. It was interesting reading some of the tweets from the reporters that were on the floor. Desperate. I mean, the House is desperate. The president is desperate. Senate is desperate for all of these House Freedom Caucus members to get in line, to the point where some GOP senators were literally writing down figures on pieces of paper to give to the House Freedom Caucus to say, hey, look, this is what we promised we're going to cut in spending. Now, I don't know what they do after they pass the resolution. They walk down the hallway with a piece of paper and said, what happened to this?
There's an IOU.
Right, it's an IOU.
Well, this morning, I made reference to the 100% award ceremony we had here at our headquarters, but we had many Republicans here, including the House Speaker and the Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, Mike Johnson, and I was discussing with them the situation, and both were, they realize they have very little to work with. They can lose 3 votes, and that's it. But moving forward, very confident that at the end of the day, when they got to the vote, that they would have the votes. Now, we'll see soon enough. But the market, the stock market has been responding to the tariffs. There's a lot of money that is out there, and a lot of people are waiting to see what happens with this budget bill, because it includes the tax cuts from 2017 that President Trump did in his first administration, extending those, making those permanent, and so that will be a stabilizing force to the economy. So that's one of the reasons they're moving forward with this, not delaying it, not taking another route, but directly putting in place a mechanism by which these tax cuts can be made permanent.
Well, and I think that also puts the squeeze on these members, as they know the time is short, regardless of what happens with the tariffs or otherwise. Businesses need to plan. And we also are coming up on a House recess. Easter's in the wings. I know that Mike Johnson is planning to keep people if he doesn't get the vote tonight. But it'll be I don't think anyone can predict which way this will go. Now, if it doesn't go Mike Johnson's way, there are a few options on the table, things that the House Republicans can do. They could, for instance, have a conference. Jim Jordan has suggested, why don't we get both sides together in a conference like they do when they're trying to cobble together 2 kinds of legislation? Why don't we do a formal caucus or conference or a quasi-formal conference, they could try to amend the Senate bill. But then if they do that, there's no reason for the Senate to take that up if this is the best that they're offering. I mean, there are a lot of ways they could go about it. They could even start the reconciliation process, which Andy Harris alluded to. You could just come to the table, start mapping everything out now, sort of get the brass tacks, as he said, put some meat on the bones of what this would look like, and then sort of negotiate from there. So there are options, but
there are options. In discussing this with Republican leaders, their concern is that that's not enough of a stabilizing force, of a guarantee that something is moving forward. And with that 2-week vacation that you're talking about, not vacation, but a break, I think one of the weeks is in-district work week, but the other is for the Easter break. That leaves too much volatility, what we've seen in the last week, and so they need to do something to bring some stability to the economy over this period of time.
And I think you're also seeing very interesting players in this debate. There were about 20 governors who also sent a letter to the White House thanking President Trump on Monday for his support of the Senate bill. I think they're also seeing where this danger leads, that if we do have this sort of barreling impact on the economy, what will stop it? And they just see this as a starting point. Let's just come to the table, let's pass this bill, and then let's change it when we're in negotiations.
So let's talk about, we got a few minutes left here, Suzanne. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that they may address before they leave town. We had thought there might be a vote on the SAVE Act. I'm going to talk a little bit later about that. That's the voting integrity bill. But it does look like they may address judges, rogue judges.
Right, which has been a concern of both chambers. So Darrell Issa has the bill in the House. You've had Senator Grassley on to talk about his version in the Senate. And this I assume, would be not even a question for Republicans. It's a hugely popular bill to rein in some of these lower court activists that we're seeing who are making sweeping judgments, stopping all of President Trump's agenda. And these are unelected district court judges. There are about 700 of them in the country who are able to put the brakes on a president, completely usurping his executive authority.
So the issue with these judges and what this legislation, it's surgical. It's not sweeping.
Right.
It simply says that when you issue an injunction, meaning you stop a policy, or you stop, in this case, an executive order, it only applies to those who appeared before your court, and it's only effective in your district.
Exactly.
As opposed to what we've seen, a unprecedented number of these federal district court judges issue injunctions that have been nationwide.
Right.
That's unheard of.
No, and if you look back to the Obama administration, he was in office 8 years. There were 12 national injunctions when Obama was in office. We've already seen almost 20 for President Trump, and you're talking about big issues: DEI, federal workers, what's his power on illegal immigration, deportations, and it's completely out of control. I think that we just haven't really seen a push to undo some of this judicial activism because we've had so many good judges that Trump has appointed.
But I will point out this cuts both ways.
True.
Because there have been, just not nearly as many, but there have been decisions during Biden's time, during Obama's time, when Republican-appointed judges issued these broader injunctions. So this does cut both ways, but I think it goes back to the intent of the courts, which are created by Congress in these districts.
Well, it's important to remember that the Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate these courts. The court shouldn't be higher than the executive branch, just as it shouldn't be higher than the legislative branch. So I think this is completely within their purview to say, let's take a look at what these people are doing and get it back to the parties involved. If someone's suing, it should be them that's affected, not the entire country, not put an agenda on entire whole.
Any chance we might see Democrats vote for that?
It would be interesting. It would certainly tell us a lot about the Democratic Party if we got any on board with that.
I mean, as I said, this is something that does cut both ways. So but it's almost as
it tends
if
to benefit the Democrats.
It does, but it is. Biden complained about it because there was venue shopping during
Which
his...
persists, and that's a whole other issue.
It is, but it's it's the first step in getting these nationwide injunctions.
Right.
But I think they are so consumed with trying to stop Donald Trump and the policies that he is advancing that, I mean, they could have a vote for free ice cream and they wouldn't vote for it. I mean, if it's anything to do that would advance Donald Trump in his agenda,
They'll oppose it.
They'll oppose it. I mean, it's an interesting place that we are in as a country where there's very little bipartisan support for anything.
And bipartisanship used to be a good thing. Compromise used to be a good thing. It's why the Senate was created the way it was. And now you see so little of that. And I mean, I know that you've also seen the poll about the leftists who said recently that they don't even mind. They think it would be justifiable to support the assassination of a president. I mean, that's how far conversations have gone. There's such a lack of civility. And without civility, how do you have conversations about moving the country forward?
Well, I actually had that conversation this week on C-SPAN because I think civility is important, and I think as Christians, we need to bring that back in because we see people. This doesn't mean we agree on policy, by no means. We don't have to agree with wrong-headed policy or policy that's in contradiction to biblical truth, but we have to see other people as they are. They are image bearers of God, and we want to see them in relationship with God through the Lord Jesus Christ, but to do that, we have to have conversations.
Right.
We don't get anywhere if we don't talk. So thanks for talking to me today.
Oh, I enjoyed it.